Hey, how's it going? So we're going to be making this one here from Redux. So we're going to have a basic counter, plus minus, add 12, and then we're going to have an array. And then we're going to just add to array and whatever is going to be B, or whatever you want. Okay, so the original video is this one here. I'm going to link it in the description below. So you can see it in there, and documents, I'm gonna link it in description below as well. Honestly, this one is literally copy and paste exercise. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is I want to explain certain parts, so you don't get confused. Okay, so we're gonna call it Redux YouTube, okay? So we will do, you will need to create React app. So we go to new terminal. npx create React app latest. And then dot is gonna be because we want this to be our root, Redux YouTube. Okay, so I'm gonna pause until this gets installed, and then we'll resume. Okay, doc. So we have our create React app done. So we have it done. Okay, so honestly, we're just gonna follow the this thing here. I have like my own version of it. It's pretty much almost identical, but I just want to see if it works, if I can do it from my one. And I'm gonna explain. I'm gonna link this in the description below so you can see as well. There are some explanations in here, so that's what we're gonna be installing. While this is being done, we are going to clean this thing up a little bit, because there's a lot of shite we don't need in here. Just remove this. Let's add some padding, 60 pixels, so it looks a bit better. So here we're gonna have our counter, probably, and here we're gonna have our array. So that's gonna be our structure. So now we can npm start it. Okay, so there it is, right? That should be it. It's a bit slow because I don't know, when I'm recording, and also I have so many extensions, that's why it can be a bit slow for me. Okay, so that's our counter and array. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to create a folder in source called Redux, and then we need to create a file called main store. Now I'm gonna do it like my own way, because I just want to make sure that I fundamentally understand what I'm doing. I'm not just kind of copying pasting BS without knowing what I'm doing. So this is gonna be our kind of main store. Maybe config, because this here is going to hold the entire store, right? Because there is store, and then there is what they call slices, right? So slice is effectively a store. It's like it's kind of like a state I don't know how to explain it. Like, they have like two big stores, right? So one is the global store where every single other store lives that you can access from anywhere. And you have slices, which is technically like a miniaturized store where all of your states live and all that stuff. Yeah, so store is where you have reducers for your slices. Well, you'll see. Anyway, I'll just go step by step and then I will explain it to you. So this is config store, and we will change this name to main store, for example, like this. Copy this here. Okay, so this is where our store lives. So now we want to create a new store. Well, this is our store config or whatever. So now we need to create a counter array store. I don't know, I'll call it counter and array slice.js. So that's what it's going to be. Okay, so before we do that, we need to go into index and we need to wrap. So we don't need strict mode at all. So we need to add Redux stuff. So the first thing we need to add is we need to add the provider, I think, right? It's called. So this is this thing here. So provider like this. And provider has a property inside of it, which is called store. And in here we want to put this guy here, the main store. That's what we want to put in here. Import from Redux, and then we need main store config. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this guy here. Oopsie. Oopsie. What the hell happened? Oh, okay. So this guy here allows your entire app to access these stores. So stores are gonna live in here. Like they're like, I don't know, they're just called slices basically. And each slice is like a state manager by itself. Okay, so now we made this available, so now let's do this thing here. Okay. So first we need to import the slice, so that's what we're gonna use. Then we need to create initial state, which is gonna be const equals initial state. I think it's like this. Ini. Honestly, it's much better to copy and paste from the docs. Okay, so this initial state. So we need export const, and we call this counter and array slice, like this, and then create slice. So this is going to be a gigantic object, right? So name, whatever you want it to be. No, honestly, name is like not that relevant, so call it whatever, counter and array slice, like this. This is like whatever you want it to be. Then we need initial state, then reducers. Okay. So reducers are basically your functions that go to change the state. Alright, so let's do increase count. Let's just do this. Increase count. State is the argument. And then state target the I don't know, we'll just call it count for this purpose. Okay, so we're gonna count, target the count equals state.count plus 1. We can do it this way. And then let's change array as well. Okay, so add to array. So this is gonna have state and it's also gonna have action. You can console log action. I'll show you in a second. So let's do. So you will see what's inside action. Action will basically have type and payload, right? So that payload is an object from which you can extract value. So we're gonna do state.array1. Remember, we're targeting this thing here, and then we want to push. I don't know. Let's just push B. Actually, we can probably just push count, honestly. No, I'm not gonna confuse you, because it's gonna get very, very confusing then. I'll just do like super basic. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to do this basically const and export our functions or whatever. They're called actions, but like I'll call them functions. So we need this one, and then we need this one here. Equals, and this name actions. So whatever you name this thing will go here, and then we want to also export default, whatever you called the store, dot reducer. Okay, so this thing here is going to go in here, right? So this is basically you are adding this slice of the store into the global store, right? And then these actions are going to be used to set the state. Now I'll show you, okay? I'll show you. Okay, so let's add this thing. To here first. Now in here you can put it as any name. Honestly, you can just, I'll show you that you can call it shake and bake. Right, so counter array slice. There you go. And now you can call it again whatever the hell you want. I will call it counter and array slice. And then any name, because it comes from here. You see? Okay, so this is this setup. Okay, so now we need to go into our app, and we're pretty much good to go. First thing we need to do is we need to import these functions. These guys here. Oh, well, yeah. We can do it this way. Import these guys from Redux, and then we want to go our store. Okay. So these guys are identical to. Do you remember? I'll just give you. I'll write it out in here. So const whatever, let's say count, set count equals to use state 0. So these guys here are set count. Now they're just a lot. It's a lot longer to construct them, but that's effectively what they do. That's kind of what they do. All right, so count, to access this value here, we need a thing called what is that thing called? Yeah. So it's going to be called use selector hook. Right? So use selector hook gives you access to values. So it's this thing here, effectively. Okay. So these are going to be our states. So we want to, let's say, get the count first in, right? So const count equals, right? Use the hook, use selector. It takes argument state. Okay, so this state here is this entire store, or whatever it's called, I don't know, store. Okay. So now you can, you see, so this, how to explain it, I don't know, this state here basically refers to this object here. So now you can pull through dot notation this thing from it. Okay, so state, again, state refers to this thing here, this object, and then with dot, which is gonna be this one here, and now this thing here refers to this entire state, to this object here, to this initial state here. So again, right, so state refers to this thing here. We're using dot notation to access this. Now we want to access initial state, either count or array. So we're gonna use count, which is gonna be dot count, like this. And now we should be able to see it in our display. You see, there it is. Now, what does this use selector do? It does two things. One is it allows you to get the state from the store, and second thing it does, it subscribes to the updates. So if this counter updates from anywhere in the app, this component is going to re-render. Right? So it's very important to remember that not only does it display state, it also re-renders the component when state changes, when corresponding state changes. Alright, so the second thing is, how do we actually change the state? So let's just do button add, okay, on click equals. Alright, so the second thing we need is a, it's kind of like, it's a hook as well. Use dispatch. So use dispatch is basically, you have to combine use dispatch with your functions to have an effect of this set count. So first thing you need to do, you need to initialize your use dispatch. So let's call it const dispatch. I think it's like this, right? Let me just double check. Yeah. And then it's very simple, we just use dispatch hook. Okay, so now how do we create this set count? So first thing we do, we need to call this hook here. Alright. And then inside the hook, we put our action, which is, let's do increase count. Let's just do increase count. And we call it. And then that's it. Now we can. So you see, kind of like, it serves the same purpose as set count, but you have to use dispatch hook first, and inside of it you put your functions or actions, whatever in your mind, whatever you call it, is good enough. Do you know what I mean? Normally they're called actions, I think, right? And they come from here. right? Because you created them here. And then that should give us ability to increment, right? Okay, so let's add a... Alright, so let's do array. So let's display array. Okay, so to display array, we need a selector, right? So let's do const array1, use selector. Again, state is this entire store. So this thing here. State refers to this object here. So again, we want to access this. And we want to now, the next one refers to initial state, which is going to be array1. So we're going to put array1. Now we will not be able to display array1. I wonder if we can. Let me just see. Oh! Yeah, well, we can display it, but it has A in it. Let's just keep it. Okay. So now let's add to array. So let's do on click again. Dispatch. And then we want to add to array, this method here. Now remember that add to array had a payload in it, so we can just put it in here, which is going to be B, for example. Right, so you see we have action. Okay, let's console log it so you'll be able to see it. Okay. So now look, what's inside action? There is type, right? If you're familiar with Redux, it's kind of like a direction to tells the reducer what to do, how to mutate your state, right? Well, not mutate, how to update your state, right? And then payload. All right, so now we can, in here, whoopsie, my apologies. So now in here, as opposed to push B, we can say payload. Oh, my apologies. Action dot payload. Right, so whatever we put into that thing, well, that argument is gonna be the payload. So let's put C. So now we add to array, and it's gonna be C. Okay, so let's add another, I don't know, let's do decrease. Decrease, well, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do it like this, state, state dot count equals state dot count minus 1. I know you can do like the... there is an easier way of doing it, like state minus minus or whatever, minus equals minus something. Like I just learned not to trust them because they can, when I was doing algorithms, they were messing up my results, so I decided not to. I opted out not to do them at all. Okay, so now we need to export this thing here. We need to add it in here. And now we need to create a button to do it. Okay, so, well, I can just copy and paste, right? Well, let me just type it out so you'll be able to see. Button minus. So on click equals. So remember, we need to use the dispatch first. Then inside dispatch, we want to put the action that we want to trigger. And then we're going to call that action. So now we should have add, now we have minus. and we have add to array. And that's about it. That's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. Remember to like and subscribe. Take care. Bye bye.